Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
There is an appeal process for all decisions of the Metropolitan Transportation Licensing Commission, and required to read this at the beginning of every meeting. Pursuant to the provisions of Section 2.68030 of the Metropolitan Code of Laws, notice is hereby given if you're not satisfied with the decision made by the Metropolitan Transportation Licensing Commission. You may appeal the decision by petitioning for a writ of certiorari with the Davidson County Chancery or Circuit Court. Your appeal must be filed within 60 days of the date of the entry of the Metropolitan Transportation Licensing Commission's decision. We advise that you seek your own independent legal advice to ensure that your appeal is filed in a timely manner and that all procedural requirements have been met. Next item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes. And the minutes have been previously distributed.
Move for approval.
We have a motion and a second. Are there any discussion? Is there any discussion or any corrections? Nope. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Approved. Next item on the agenda relates to horse-drawn carriages and consideration of a rule related to shoes used for horses. Mr. Fields, you want to set the table on this?
We asked for a public hearing to discuss the idea of using alternate shoes than what we've been using. It had been brought to my attention that we needed to examine the streets. We went to the director of, or the manager of paving for the government and asked him to review and make some comments, and that's kind of what's got us here now. I would like to discuss going from a steel shoe to a synthetic rubber alternate material shoe to reduce the amount of damage being done to the downtown streets and those small areas they're able to operate.
And so that would be a recommendation from the paving director?
Mm-hmm. I'll be sharing that with you at the end of the public hearing.
Okay, all right. So I believe we have to open the public hearing. And do we have any of the sheets of people wishing to?
We did not, because we were pretty sure we knew who were going to speak.
All right. Well, I guess we'll open it up, and we'll have, I think we have a 2-minute time limit on that. And so I guess you can approach the podium and state your name and your business.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Gary Blackburn. I represent Sugar Creek Carriages, who is a licensed or permitted carrier by this commission. What I would like to do is to make a brief introduction. We have here today Mr. Smith, who is a certified farrier. A farrier is basically a podiatrist for horses, but he actually has expertise and training in that. We also have Dr. Mark Brannon here, who is a veterinarian from Dixon County. In the interest of time, the things that we're discussing, I've tried to put in a summary form in the materials that I've given you, so I'll try not to take much of your time. Sugar Creek is opposed to this for a number of reasons, if I can sum those up. Number one, this is not about the welfare of horses. This is about the subjective welfare of certain streets. Mr. Smith will explain why this is not about the welfare of horses, as will Dr. Brannon. I would note that part of your materials is an email from the operators union in Manhattan, who operate these carriages in Central Park. They only use the steel, and they're very much opposed to it. The essential welfare issue has to do with the strain on the hoofs the strain on the feet, and the slippage. If you go to some places where these might be used, such as Charleston, South Carolina, you're talking about absolutely level, below sea level in that instance, land. Here we have undulating surfaces and we have hills, and the rubber does not adhere, the proof will show, to those streets in the same way that a metal shoe would. Secondly, I would argue that this is not necessary. The photographs that Mr. Field's been kind enough to show me indicate only superficial scratch marks, this type of thing. They've been using these shoes, Mr. Smith has, for 16 years. I have had occasion to deal with issues involving damage to pavement in years past in my work, and what they've had to do with is construction. Some of you may have observed yourselves that when you have a project that's being constructed, a temporary road is put down first. And once the project is substantially completed, the permanent asphalt is put down on top of it. That's because it's well understood that the heavy equipment, concrete trucks, trucks hauling steel, this type of thing, dump trucks with rock, all of these things can damage the roads far more than a horse or a carriage or anything issue.
All right, thank you, Mr. Blackburn.
He'll also speak, if I can have Mr. Smith.
Can I present this to you, sir?
Surely.
This is what we're currently using. Keep in mind on that shoe right there, a rubber shoe, this will be further as I instruct you. A rubber shoe is about this thick. It's about 2 inches thick versus this right here. And that's the gripping action right here.
Mr. Smith, we want to stay within our time constraints that we can. You have provided me with a cost analysis. I've summarized this and put it in your materials. And you're estimating that the cost to Sugar Creek carriages for a year to transition to rubber horseshoes is about $15,652 per year.
Yes, sir.
Now, what causes that?
The shoes are $200 per set, versus the metal shoes, which is around $20 to $25 per set. And the rubber shoes will last approximately 4 weeks. You may get by with 5 weeks, or you might get by with only 3 weeks. The rubber will separate, and that will impede the horse's travel also, which, let me show you something else real quick. The result of that will be, this diagram shows the front extensor tendon of the horse's hoof. That's broke. That requires surgery. And it may not, if the surgery works, it may not work. As Mr. Brandon will testify also. The cost on this is $15,200 per year additional cost, which my base cost now for the metal shoes is around $2,500 per year.
And you have 7 animals.
That's 7 animals.
All right. And have you had a decrease in your earnings because, and this wasn't the fault of this commission, but you lost some carriage stands that were big producers? All of you did?
Yes, we did. As testimony last hearing, if y'all remember, about a 20 to 30% decrease in our revenue.
Right. Now, you are I don't know if certified the right word, but you are an authorized farrier.
Yes.
Did I describe that right, that a farrier is like a podiatrist for a horse?
Yes. I specialize in the travel, the putting on the shoes. And
just briefly, you just have 30 seconds here. The rear feet, tell them the danger to the animals with regard to how the rear feet on a horse work as opposed to the front two.
The anatomy of a horse is natural action for the horse's hoof for the back feet to come and slide about 1 inch or maybe 1.5 inches. That's the natural travel of a horse on the back feet. And the rubber shoes don't let them do that. Plus, you've got the 2 inches that impedes the travel also, and it puts undue strain and tearage on the extensor tendon and the flexor tendons. And
our time is up. Are there places where the carriages operate that are on inclines or declines or on hills?
Absolutely. Going to and from work, plus the tours that we've got permission within our routes to go.
Are there oil products on those streets?
Yes, the horse travels in the middle of the lane, and the drippage from the cars build up a tar-like substance, and rubber on rubber is extremely slick, especially when it rains, so that's a big
So
danger.
that's a greater threat to the horses.
Absolutely, directly affects the horse's well-being.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Smith.
Dr. Brandon? Doctor, you told me you're a veterinarian for 26 years, went to the University of Tennessee, therefore a consummate expert.
Absolutely.
And you've practiced veterinary medicine for all those years in Dixon County.
Yes, sir, 26 years.
Do you do work specifically with regard to horses and horses' hooves and feet?
I do. It's not the sole thing I do, but
Right.
yes, I do.
All right. All right, and you have sent us an email, which is in the packet that I provided. But can you please just provide these ladies and gentlemen with your expert opinion about the wisdom of switching to rubber horseshoes, given the terrain that we deal with in Davidson County?
Well, first of all, I don't know about the cost or anything else, so I'd be more concerned with the health of the horse, by all means. It's the common shoe. The shoe that you would use normally would be the metal shoe because it does grip better. You would think rubber would grip, but like he just said, if you get rubber this way, I'm sure you've all worn shoes and stepped on something wet and your feet slip out from under you. So I would be concerned with those, especially in wet conditions or snow or ice, where the horses would slip and even could fall, and so that would be detrimental to the horse. Because of the shoeing that would have to go on much more repeatedly, the horse's hooves would be damaged. If you know how to put a shoe on, they nail them in. The rubber doesn't hold the nails as well. The nails will pull loose. The rubber wears quickly, so you have to replace them a lot more often. And so what you would do is you'd have a nail hole, and then sooner than you would want it, you'd have to have another one. And so repeatedly putting nails in that hoof wall of the horse would cause a weakening of the hoof wall, and so that could damage the foot. As far as rubber, in my opinion, rubber and horses' feet only have certain places that they would be useful. Most of the time it would be treating a condition rather than in travel. These horses would be more like athletes, and so their footing would be very important. So I would certainly oppose the rubber shoes and go with the shoes that they're using.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I believe that takes up our time. We have, because we knew there was a time limitation, we've distributed some materials, I think, that's largely redundant what we've talked about. And I did speak earlier with council. I think I would appreciate if it were mentioned on the record that this is within this board's jurisdiction. I'm not disputing that. I just would think that would be useful to have stated on the record.
If you'd like.
So generally, this commission's rulemaking authority is governed by Section 2-100-030 of the Metropolitan Code. Subsection A of that says there is imposed upon such commission the authority, power, and duty to adopt, promulgate, and enforce such rules and regulations to carry out the provisions of Chapters 1254, 672, 674, 680, and 681 of this code, and such chapters concerning vehicles for hire as may be later enacted, which the Commission deems necessary for the proper and safe operation of any business providing vehicle for hire services, provided that such rules and regulations shall not conflict with any laws of the state, the charter, or any ordinance of the metropolitan government, nor shall such rules or regulations exceed the limits of authority granted to such commission by Chapters 1254, 672, 674, 680, and 681, or any other chapter later enacted.
Sounds good. Is there anyone else wishing to speak? Yes.
My name is Sarah Beth Williams with Cumberland Carriage Tours. I had some questions regarding the rubber shoes. I am not for the rubber shoes. I think that what we've heard today with a certified veterinarian or farrier, that this should, and the stuff that you already have should be enough evidence. I believe that if we are going to do traffic studies, we also should do studies regarding different opinions and different professional people out there. I have called several carriage companies, north, south, east, and west. I've spoken with Wind Willow Carriage Company, which was the company that sponsored and did the test market for the Smooth Walker shoes, which is the current shoes that are apparently used on some of the horse carriage companies that have to use them in Opryland and other in downtown. They're totally against the rubber shoes. They also have to take them off. The only reason why they use them is for the heat conditions for the pavement. That's the only reason why they use these shoes. But they do oppose a danger because of the slippage and the oils that we do have on the streets. The other things that I had as far as the presentation is that if these other companies are for these rubber shoes, if other companies are for the rubber shoes, why did they use them and then take them off? They use them, but they take them off. Is there a cost issue? And apparently there is a cost issue because I'm a smaller company. It's not going to cost me as much money, but it will cost me a lot in vet bills. And I have horses that use tungsten instead of the boron. I use tungsten, which are the pins. And according to the studies and all the research that they've done on Google, you can pull it up on the internet. They don't scrape the pavement like boron does. And boron, some people use the boron that go all the way around the front shoe. The boron does have aggressive grip. But the tungsten pins that my farrier uses, they go 2 in the front and 2 in the back of the heel. And it causes the horses to step out better, and they can pull further out because they do pull from the back of their legs. But here's the thing, it's not catching like carpet would on a rubber shoe on rubber. It causes them to go forward and to follow through with a full walk. So it's a lot better, they're a lot more comfortable. It doesn't scrape the pavement, and I do have issues with the construction downtown. And I agree, dump trucks, I see 4 or 5 of them come down on Broadway.
Let's stick with the horse discussion.
Okay, well that does have to do with it because that's why we're here.
Well, we're talking about shoeing horses.
Well, the issue is that I'm against the rubber shoes. I don't believe that it's taking a problem. I don't think there's a problem with the pavement and the rubber shoes. I think it's the construction. You know, there's mass construction in Nashville, and they're still building. They're getting ready to tear down another building. It was on the news. I mean, you know, when you got cement trucks and dump trucks, all these things.
Thank you, Ms. Williams.
Thank you.
Anybody else wishing to speak?
My name is Melody Robinson, and I'm with American Melody Carriages, and I also work for Southern Comfort Carriages. I've done some research. I don't usually get involved in these things, but I was asked to do some research and to speak if I wanted to. There are several different kinds of shoes. She mentioned the Smooth Walker. That was not what was used at Opryland. That was actually Remuda tire, and Paul used those for Southern Comfort at Opryland for the past 2 years. And I was initially against rubber shoes because the thing that I found, a lot of people said that it did not allow for the natural slippage. Like when the horse walks, they have a natural slip with their front feet. The rubber was said to have stopped that and just put a lot of torque on their ligaments and tendons. I found that when we were using those at Opryland, the horses adjusted to them very well, and they learned to walk with them. So it didn't seem to affect them negatively. I know that I believe that the rubber shoes would be better for the horses because of impact absorption. There are several different kinds of shoes out there. There's even one that's actually a plastic shoe. It's called a Pona shoe. And those ones are only $21 a pair, which would be comparable to the metal shoe, which Mr. Smith mentioned. Those ones may not last as long as a rubber shoe, but they actually are a circle, so they go around the back of the foot also. When a shoe is put on a horse, that puts all the pressure when they step on the outside wall. And so on a natural foot, the frog and the sole of the foot would also hit the ground. And this is especially important with the heavier drafts because they are heavier. It just puts a lot of weight on the wall, which causes that wall to separate, which causes laminitis and founder. And also because there's no impact absorption with the metal shoes, it causes them later in life to become arthritic and stiff in their legs and joints. And as far as the money, we spend thousands of dollars on carriages and horses. Why would we not want to put a little extra into doing something that would make them more comfortable? We don't walk around on metal shoes. Can you imagine how that would feel to us? The rubber shoes would also allow the foot, when the foot comes down, it flexes. So those would allow for the foot to flex out like a normal, like a barefoot horse.
All right.
Do you have any other questions?
Well, we might in a moment, but
Okay.
thank you.
To respond to those
Okay.
issues about the
Thank-
arthritis.
Did we close the public hearing?
I do have one more person I'd like to get on the telephone.
Okay.
She could not be here from Virginia today to talk to us, but if you'll bear with me
Can I
just a
request
second.
afterwards that the doctor return and respond to? Read online.
This is good television.
Biology class.
All right.
I'm concerned that the way this is worded in the council
All
code
right, that would be
section.
good.
It says rubber coated pads or steel bearing toe shoes. But they already give an alternative.
Hello.
And so
Hello, Ms. Carter. This is Billy Fields in Nashville with the Transportation Licensing Commission.
Yes, sir. How are you?
I'm doing well. You're on a speakerphone in a public hearing in our courthouse. If you would you introduce yourself and your experience, and then I'm assuming there'll be some questions, but if you'd like to make a brief presentation, a 2-minute presentation, the chair tells me, but if you'd introduce yourself, then anything you'd like to say on the issue that you and I have been discussing.
Sure, no problem. Hi, my name is Shannon Carter. I am a degreed equine podiatrist and a licensed professional farrier in Virginia. I am the farrier to the Busch Gardens, Clydesdales in Williamsburg, Virginia, and I specialize in rehabilitative hoof care as well as applying the rubber shoes.
Thank you, ma'am. Would you just a little bit, we've heard some conversation about rubber shoes. What's your general opinion on steel shoes and rubber shoes or aluminum shoes with respect to the draft workhorses?
I have found in my experience when I started, I have been using rubber shoes for I would say about 8 to 9 years now. And I started with Busch Gardens 4 years ago. It was called in for a variety of problems. Some of the horses, when working, were slipping on the pavement randomly. This wasn't under heavy loads or anything. They would just be in hand, walking, and then the horse would literally just lose his balance. And at one point went to his knees. He was endangering the handlers. He was wearing steel shoes. He also had borium at the toes to try to help with the skidding issue. And I suggested we try some of the rubber shoes. They're not actually rubber. I just call them that for ease. They're made of polyurethane, which is the same stuff skateboard wheels is made out of. And we went ahead and applied it to just this one horse as a test to see how it would go. Not only did he stop tripping, they also reported that he was having some hock pain and that he had had his hocks injected in the past. And he was actually coming up more sound, seemed happier in his work, and was having less problems with that. But we went ahead and did all 6 horses in the polyurethane shoes, and they said that there was just remarkable change in attitude, sound mist. We had less tripping. One of the horses would overreach and kind of step on his own front feet and kind of stumble a little bit. They said that completely stopped as well. We've used them during the summer seasons, and one horse had some special needs, and we went ahead and kept him in the rubber year-round, and so we've used this on ice and snow. And they said that it was just absolutely fantastic in all terrains, that we didn't have any problem with falling, slipping, or tripping.
I just want to make sure now, the horses that we're talking about in the last few minutes were the Clydesdales at Busch Gardens, correct?
Correct, yes.
If y'all have any questions.
All right. And, yeah, and so I think we're going to go ahead and perhaps have some questions for you, ma'am.
Sure.
Ms. Garner, did I hear you say that you use these polyurethane shoes in the summertime but switch to steel shoes in the wintertime?
We don't use steel shoes at all anymore. The horses don't do any work or very little work in the winter, so we just pulled the shoes for the health of the hoof.
Okay. Any advantages to a steel shoe over a polyurethane?
Not that I've seen. I don't only do Clydesdales, I also do hunter jumpers and adventures in the rubber. And we have had, I started at a barn with just one horse that had lameness issues. We went to rubber, and he was also having some tripping and falling issues. And we went ahead and put him in rubber, and he went from last place to second place in the year-end state horse show. We have improved movement on them. I don't use steel at all, unless I'm doing a rotational sounder where, it's a severe therapeutic issue. But other than that, I don't use steel whatsoever, or aluminum, just the poly.
Could you speak to the life of the shoes, steel compared to the polyurethane rubber?
Sure. I get, on an average horse, I have gotten 6 months out of, that's resetting every 5 to 6 weeks on a horse ridden about 3 times a week over varied terrain. And we're in the mountains, so that was a lot of trail riding. I've gotten 6 months on an average horse. On the Clydesdales, I'm getting 2 to 3 times more use out of the rubber than the steel. The steel was getting replaced every 1 to 2 cycles, which was every 6 weeks. And I'm getting about 3 cycles, sometimes more, out of the poly shoes. And the main thing that wears on them is at the toe, because the shoe will wear in coordinates with the pattern of the foot, how the horse is carrying himself. So usually what happens is the breakover on the toe will start to wear, and that's my main wear. And it has a lot of traction on the bottom of the shoe, so I don't usually lose traction. I just don't want a severe breakover on the front of these big guys, so I end up changing their shoes out.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Do we have other questions from the commission?
I have one other question. Ms. Carter, is there any trend out there about preferring steel over polyurethane or polyurethane over steel? I mean, do you see a national trend going on at all?
I have seen it. When I first started this like I said, I was using these shoes about 8 or 9 years, and I was specializing specifically in special needs horses and horses in pain. And a lot of the people were really reluctant to try them. Apparently, when these first came out, I guess about 20 years ago, they had rapid wear to them, and so people weren't really happy with them. The farriers I talked to said the shoes would warp, or they just were really poor wearers, or they wouldn't stay on the horse. And once we started hitting the show barns, I've noticed a lot of interest. Once the horses started moving better and we had soundness issues clearing up, it was really good for their joints. It's gotten, I used to have to choose between 2 companies to use my shoes, and now there's probably 5 or 6 out there. They're really getting a lot of attention. I've seen a lot of articles in the on the farrier articles and stuff with the rubber shoes now. People seem to be catching on that they're just very popular.
Right, thank you.
I have a question. You talked about your horses riding on trails a lot, correct?
Yes.
What about those that are going to be on concrete and blacktop?
The horses at Busch Gardens are on primarily blacktop.
On blacktop.
And they were doing fantastic. I just found that those were, they have less, if the horses are going to be standing a lot on the blacktop, of course it's hot in the summer, I'm getting a lot less change in temperature to the foot. I've actually done some clinics with a thermal imaging camera, and we showed that the horses in the polyurethane shoes hooked changed to half a degree standing on the hot blacktop, but we had horses in steel that were changing up to 4 degrees. And studies have shown if you change the temperature of the horse's foot by half a degree, that they lose about 20% of their proprioception, or their ability to know where their feet are in space. So that's my guess what was happening with these horses that were having the tripping issues, is that they simply they're either a temperature change, but also the vibration from the metal going into the foot. They just had a harder time kind of keeping an eye on where their feet were in space at the time.
Thank you. Do we have other questions from the commission?
I only had one other question, Ms. Carter. What kind of vehicle or carriage or wagon are the horses generally pulling?
They don't pull at this particular location.
Okay.
These guys they actually go through the park, they're hand walked, so they don't have to pull. I have had some friends in Missouri, carriage drivers, and she uses the shoe. She's actually a farrier, so she does her own, but I'm not familiar with what type of carriage she uses, but I know that they are used.
All right.
You might leave her on the line. You might leave her on the line in case they ask other.
Ms. Carter, could you stay on the line with us for just a little bit?
Of course.
Okay, we'll be right back with you.
Thank you.
Okay.
And your microphone is live, so if they call and you'll be able to speak.
Okay, great.
And we'll be able to hear you.
Okay.
So that would close the,
Yeah, unless there's somebody else.
anyone else wishing to speak? All right, we'll close the public hearing on that. We have time for, we have all kinds of time, but now's the opportunity for questions for everyone else.
I'd like to hear the doctor respond to what we just heard.
Well,
Can you please?
okay. Well, I would have a couple of questions, first of all, and of course, I don't discount her experience by any means if she's doing those things. One question was, I heard you say that it was your shoe line, and I'm not questioning ethics or anything else, but is this your own line that you're doing?
I'm sorry, is that question for me?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Yes, it's for you. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, no, I don't sell the shoes. I don't make the shoes.
Okay.
And I am not reimbursed by any company. I use several different companies based on the horses that I'm doing, but no, I have no monetary, nothing to gain from this other than helping horses.
Okay, thank you. Other questions would be, is there a level of experience that's required to putting on the rubber shoes in your line? I mean, so certainly it's less common. You said that there was probably a trend, but the numbers would be so low that, of course, if more people are doing it, then it would make it a trend, I would say. So is there a certain level of expertise that makes it different than putting on metal shoes?
It's actually much easier because you don't have to work with a forge, shape the shoe in any way other than placing it on the bottom of the horse's foot, taking a marker, marking the foot onto the shoe, and trimming any excess with a pair of nippers. So it's actually much easier. I know with the traditional farriers, and you have to go to school, have to learn different types of metal, etc., how to use the forges. And I actually work out of a car, and I carry all the shoes in the back of it, and I just simply carry my Sharpie and a pair of nippers and just trim them. So it's actually much easier.
Okay. You said you're in the mountains, but Busch Gardens would be relatively flat, would it not? I mean, is it? It's certainly well maintained.
We are in Virginia, but we do have some hills there, but it's relatively flat.
Yeah, we're talking about streets here, up and down hills on asphalt, and so you think that the rubber shoes hold up better than the metal shoes? You're just talking about the length of the life of the shoe. You said you reset them every 4 to 5 weeks, right?
Every 5 to 6.
5 to 6 weeks. And how often, well, you don't use the metal shoes, but
Same, they would be reset every 5 to 6.
that's just protocol.
Keeping up with the growth of the foot. It's the shoe actually lasts twice as long. Like you can reuse the shoe instead of having a metal shoe, you would have to throw it away or recycle it. You can actually reset the shoe again, so 2 to 3 times more than you could your metal.
Okay. I don't remember a lot of the was there another question that, those are just some things I wrote down at the end, but did you ever use metal shoes before?
Yes.
Okay, how long did you do that?
Oh, I would say, I'm trying to think how long I've been doing this. Probably 3 to 4 years with the metal shoes.
And what was it
once I actually was given a free pair to try, and I had a horse with a fractured coffin bone, and I nailed a pair of the rubber shoes on him as an experiment, and my horse went from unrideable to completely sound, and I was blown away. I was just absolutely fell in love, and then eased out of the metal into doing the rubber shoes, and I haven't looked back.
Okay, so how fresh was the coffin bone fracture? Because that would be interesting.
I'm sorry. It was. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
I was just going to say, how recent was the coffin bone fracture? Because most coffin bone fractures, they don't get better quickly, or really no matter what you use as far as shoeing.
Absolutely. It had been chipped. It had been broken, I would say a year prior, and I had a vet come out. We did x-rays. They were unable to find anything conclusive. He told me to go ahead and put metal shoes on, do the pour-in pads. He was assuming it was navicular, but let's just stabilize the whole hoof.
Right.
And the horse was just unsound. He was unsound for a year. I tried barefoot, tried boots, tried everything, and I had nothing to lose, and put the rubber on. And what I'm gathering happened was that the rubber was stopping the vibration of the foot. Even barefoot, it wasn't helping. And then the rubber essentially just absorbed the vibration that was causing him pain. And he was, back to being able to be lightly ridden by children and stuff instead of just being, unsound even in the pasture.
So have you had experience with these rubber shoes on pavement and pulling or driving?
No, I haven't. I specialize in hunter jumpers. I do have people that ride. We were trail riding, et cetera, on the pavement. The Busch Gardens horses are exclusively on pavement when they're doing their work and they're going through the park. And I've seen the wear there because they're not on dirt. They're exclusively being used through the park on asphalt.
Okay.
And then I've ridden my own personal horses on pavement going to trails to and from.
My name's John Smith with Sugar Creek Carriages. I'm a licensed farrier. Can you hear me?
Yeah, but she might not be able to.
What was her name?
Shannon Carter.
Shannon, I'm John Smith with Sugar Creek Carriages. I am a licensed farrier. I've been shoeing horses since I was 12 years old, and I'm 56 now. And these horses that you're using, you're not pulling weight with them. And also, I've never heard of a shoe only lasting, a metal shoe only lasting 5 or 6 weeks. Did you use Drill Tech or Boreum on your shoes or studs?
There was Boreum on the shoes, but no studs.
And your shoe only lasted 4 to 6 weeks?
Yes, and then on horses, just, your average riding horse, I've gotten 6 months out of a single pair of shoes.
I totally disagree with you. No disrespect, but that's absolutely ludicrous. A metal shoe will last at least 12 weeks, and we use these horses 5 days a week, sometimes 7, 8 hours per day on asphalt. We use Drill Tech, and I don't know where you're getting your information. And we also use them pulling carriages, which is around 1,500 to 3,000 pounds per horse that they're pulling, and we go uphills and downhills. These shoes last a lot longer than that, and The rubber shoes would just not hold up for us here. You may be able to get by using rubber shoes with hunter jumpers to where people only ride on the horse's back, not pulling weight. So there's really not a comparison to your product versus what we're doing here with these horse and carriages. So thank you.
Thank you.
Anything else for Ms. Carter?
I'm good if they are.
All right. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you for having me.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Did that without a technology lesson.
I want to go ahead and finish the conversation.
All right. So, commissioners, do you have? Yes.
No, go ahead. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt. I have something to add to what I said earlier.
Okay.
And I have a couple of additions I'd like to make sure we have on the record.
All right.
Whenever the public hearing is.
Do we have questions for anyone that spoke at the public hearing?
I have a couple questions, Dr. Brennan. Brennan?
Yes.
Yeah, Dr. Brennan, would you mind?
Yes.
How were you notified to be here for this meeting today?
I usually do the work for Sugar Creek Carriages, and so he had called me this morning and asked me if I'd be willing. I'd written a letter a couple of weeks ago, I guess.
Received it.
And he'd asked me how I felt about rubber shoes. And
You said you do other work besides...
yes, I'm a mixed animal practitioner, so we do large animal and small animal.
What percentages...
Is equine?
What percentage of your practice is actually dealing with the hoofs of horses and shoes?
With the hoof of horses? Well, that'd be a tough question. No, probably about, I probably see 1,000 horses a year, something like that. That'd be about it. But as far as hoof, I mean, we treat all aspects. So
Do
a
you
lot of
actually
horses.
put shoes on?
I do not. I'm not a farrier. No,
Okay.
sir. No, sir. I don't play one on TV.
That's mainly what I wanted to know was
Yeah.
whether you actually do put the shoes
I'll
on.
take them off sometimes to look at what's going on underneath them. But
And
no,
you
sir.
treat his horses then?
I'm the veterinarian for sure. Yes, sir.
Thank you, that's all.
Okay.
Are there ever any circumstances that you have found that you would substitute a metal shoe for a rubber shoe?
Well, what I would say is that there are times and places. A lot of times, if there was a concussion issue and the rubber was going to be better, and most of that would be off-road type things, the trail riding and stuff like that, they would probably hold up better, and you wouldn't slip as much with the rubber shoe as they would on the asphalt or on the pavement. Most of the time, as far as rubber on a horse's foot, booted, somebody mentioned that earlier. I'd seen it in some of the stuff. They get wet underneath there. It seem to hold water more, so you actually will get a lot of problems along the white line sometimes with rubber versus metal. But as far, I would only say rubber, in my opinion, would be for a certain time treatment of a certain condition rather than as a general shoe. But I don't know, as far as percentages that come in that are shod with rubber shoes, it would be extremely low. I mean, by far the majority is going to be steel shoes, aluminum shoes.
Any more questions? Thank you.
Okay, sure.
Mr. Field,
Is public hearing concluded?
we did conclude.
Okay.
Yes.
I wanted to share a couple of things. I think Mr. Blackburn and I spoke before the meeting, and we both agreed that there's a wide, or at least I think we agreed. I won't speak for him because he won't let me. But there is many opinions on the issue. I think Johnny also knows that when he and I went to the Brotherhood of the Farriers down in Georgia back in 2002, so I could be a certified horseshoe inspector, that while I'm not an expert on horseshoes, I certainly have an understanding, at least a passable to make sure I'm not completely crazy. Second, I also think that, at least I believe that the industry would say, I have no desire to have any of the horses hurt. Absolutely none, which is why I did the same kind of thing I think Mr. Blackburn has done, is we've called around the country and we've done some research and checked with who uses what. New York, for instance, uses steel shoes, and they're going to continue to use steel shoes as far as I know. Charleston, Savannah, Memphis, Washington, D.C. I mean, we can run through a list that either do full rubber shoes or they would do rubber shoes on the front front and steel on the back if there are issues about the slippage, because unless you really look, and most people have not, and because why would you? And when you look at the anatomy of the horse hoof and the way that it actually hits, it's a very interesting process, and it is very complicated, which is why you have to be so careful of what we're doing. So throughout this, my goal was to look around and see what I could find. And I found carriage companies all around the country that use rubber shoes. I found carriage companies all around the country that used steel shoes. Some use combinations. The other two companies that are not here today, Hat Creek and Southern Comfort, Paul Morrison could not be here and Sam could not either. Paul uses the rubber shoes in the holiday season at Opryland because Opryland does not want their roads damaged. So they're required, and I said, well, what if you used them year-round? He said, well, just do whatever you need us to do if that's what the rule is. So he's not uncomfortable with wearing the shoes themselves. Sam Roberts was pretty much the same. He said, he doesn't have a problem using the rubber shoes if that's what the commission requires. Mr. Blackburn and I also talked because we talked. And we talked about the damage to the streets. I did ask that the Public Works Paving Division do an assessment of the roads. And I could share with you what they said. This is from Don Reed, who's the director of paving, or the manager of paving. He says, Metro Public Works Paving Division performed an assessment of the roads in the downtown area that have horse-drawn carriage traffic. There's evidence from the scuffed scratch marks in the roadway that the metal horseshoes are slowly removing the top surface of the roadway. The removal of the top surface will decrease the life cycle of the road. The area where the horseshoe marks are visibly present will eventually start to ravel. I've learned about paving on this too. Raveling is the loss of the fines and aggregate in the asphalt surface. Let me explain that. That is the very top part when you see brand new paving and it's black and it's shiny. That is what would be called the fines and the aggregates. So that is the very top layer of the pavement. Then he goes on, once the roadway experiences high severity of the raveling, this section of roadway will begin to crack, generate potholes, as well as rut. And that is also present at least at some parts. He goes on to say the average life cycle of a local roadway is 12 to 15 years. The section of roadway experiencing the wear and tear from metal horseshoes would probably need paving in 8 to 10 years. As a result, the life of the roadway is decreased by approximately 30%. And again, I'm not a paving expert. I did learn enough so I could at least explain what, because I knew he's in a city engineering meeting and could not be here. I would also tell you that the Metro Police Department have gone away from shoeing their horses altogether. They're not shoeing them at all. They're wearing easy boots, which is Johnny could probably describe it better, but it's basically a shoe that fits up and is attached to the horse hoof. It's not nailed or glued. It's just simply wrapped up and around and secure. Johnny probably could explain that better.
The easy boot, I've got one of them I use on a saddle horse every now and then, but it's an actual boot that encloses just like you would put a shoe on. It encloses the hoof wall. It's temporary. It's made in case you're out on the trail and your horse is through a shoe to keep your horse from damaging his shoe on your way back. It's a temporary thing, but actually the police department it's working out real good for them because their horses only come out 3 or 4 hours at a time, and they may come out one day out of a month, or they may come out twice a week. So it's a really good idea for the police department, and they save on their shoeing costs too. Sure. So that's what the Easy Boot does. But it's as far as being used for a carriage horse, it would not work. Your boots would be coming off, and plus too, for constant use, the bottom of the sole of the foot and the frog has to breathe, and the frog is often called the second heart of the horse. Every time the horse put his foot down, there's that little section, the little triangle in the bottom of the hoof. That's the frog, and it pumps blood back up through the horse's cannon bone and the coffin bone, and that's what keeps the horse's hoof from freezing in the wintertime, is pumping that blood every time they put it down. So any shoe like American Melody suggested that crossed over the back of the frog would absolutely keep the frog from working properly to circulate the blood, and that's what rejuvenates and gives a horse good healthy hoof wall to nail the horseshoe to. So but that the easy boots, that's not an option for us really, sir.
Oh, I understood that. I was just explaining what the horse was doing. I mean, clearly, what most experts would say, and I think everybody would agree, if we did not have to shoe the horse, that would be the perfect route. The reality is you can't work on the pavement, you can't work on these kind of surfaces without shoes. I suspect the old Wild Mustangs might have gotten away with it in the Wild West, but it is a different day. So I did want to share that with you. I think the reality is we know that, at least according to Public Works, that we're having some damage to the streets. I believe, based on talking with other carriers, because I have talked to other carriage companies around the country as well that use the rubber shoes, they feel very comfortable using them. I even think, and again, I'm not a veterinarian either or a farrier, but it struck me on a lot of the things I read that the long-term health of the horse from the legs seemed better when they were not shoed or used the rubber shoes. Now, that is just what I found as I went. So I wanted to share those things with you.
Mr. Fields, that could be, the reason that may be is because the rubber shoes horses are not used as a true workhorse.
Well,
and every horse that is used is going to eventually, just like an iron worker, a farrier, you're going to start getting down in the back or arthritis build up in your pastern joints and the lower hoof.
You don't have an unlimited life of a workhorse, no question about that.
Anything else, Mr. Fields?
I'm not sure I have any.
I have one quick,
All right.
if you don't mind.
Go ahead.
How long have the rubber shoes been around?
Rubber shoes started being used in 1897.
Wow.
Okay.
I've done some research.
How long is it still?
He could have said so too. He's done the same research.
I'll tell you, I've been on this commission now for quite a few years, and I can tell you that these gentlemen who own these carriage companies, they may not like each other, but they love their horses.
There's absolutely no question in my mind that none of our carriage companies would do anything to hurt the horses,
Right.
Knowingly hurt the horses. I mean, clearly the accidents we can't deal with, but I agree. And the conversation Mr. Smith just had with the commission, he and I have had multiple over the years talking about. Hard to believe we get together and talk about horse hooves, but it's a very interesting subject. It really is. It's just not useful in what I do most of the time. So.
Since Mr. Fields referred to me, may I briefly respond?
Terry, what else did you have to say?
I do have something else to say that may affect what you all have to do here today. The language I was reading to you earlier is from the general authority for you all to make rules, and you may have noticed that it had some kind of caveats about, to the extent it's not inconsistent with other ordinances. I was looking very specifically at the language of Chapter 1254, which is the horse-drawn carriage ordinance, and there is actually pretty specific language in here about shodding. It says that a permittee with a horse used in a horse-drawn carriage must adhere to the following regulations and conditions. Be appropriately shod and trimmed, and shall utilize rubber-coated pad or boots or open steel barium-tipped shoes or other shoes approved by a veterinarian. And my concern is that if council has used the word "or," that they have allowed these different options, and that it might have to go back to council to limit it to only one option. However, I do think that council would look to this commission to make a recommendation to them if you all think that, given Mr. Reed's evidence, we need to take some action to protect the roads.
Interesting.
All right, thank you. Mr. Blackburn?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I discussed this with council before. I think it would be a disaster for anybody else to be involved in this issue. This is your issue, and I can't confer jurisdiction. I don't have that power, but I will concede it for the purpose of today. How's that? You didn't see the picture. Mr. Fields was kind enough to show me the picture.
I can show it. I'm sorry.
Said to be the damage. As you see, that doesn't demonstrate any gouge marks. It doesn't demonstrate anything except some sort of wear which someone who wasn't there attributed to a horse. Now, I can tell you, I'm not an expert, but you've heard a lot of testimony today without the expert being qualified as one would be in a court. You've heard a lot of anecdotal evidence. And without it being tested by cross-examination to see how directly comparable it was. So I can just add you that. All roads, I've tried lawsuits with experts having to do with dangerous conditions of roads, and they all experience what's called polish. Polish is the erosion of the top surface, and the one that I dealt with in Murfreesboro, 7 years actually happened to be the time that had elapsed since it had previously been resurfaced. The idea that these horses, in the limited area there they are involved, are causing more damage than thousands of vehicles and multiple tons of trucks, respectfully, is absurd. It just is illogical. But I do agree, and I've discussed this with Mr. Fields, he and I can discuss about anything, that there are different things done in different places. If the rubber shoes have been around since 1898 with an industry that would manufactures rubber products, we're using that term generically, sure, and they're only now being spotted as a trend, because somebody has used it and somebody liked the use in that particular circumstance, that ought to say something by itself. If it's been around for 118 years and it's only now being discussed a little further, then something must have changed. And we've had metal shod horses, I suppose, since Andrew Jackson was here. Now let me be candid. There were no asphalt streets. I'll give you that. But this is not a new thing. One final thing. We've only had one person who's testified here who's plainly qualified to give that evidence as an expert veterinarian, and that's the doctor. We've only had one farrier who's testified here who has got the qualifications to testify as a farrier, and that's Mr. Smith. What they have said from a legal standpoint, and I understand this is not a court of law, we've quarreled about that in the past, I understand that. But from a legal standpoint, you really have only heard one side of any sort of evidence that would ever be admissible in a court.
All right.
The rest of it's anecdotal. Thank you, sir.
What was the qualifications of the lady?
She's a certified farrier with master's degrees, and I could have presented, and again,
I believe she said she's a podiatrist.
she's a equine podiatrist, what she said.
So she mainly deals with, that's her whole life is horse feed, correct?
Yeah,
sounds exciting.
She's a farrier. What I would say, and I did not want to introduce I was trying to not offer any more anecdotal than I could because I could not get an expert in on this. One of the things I found in Ohio with, due to the Amish, there have been issues on the horses in Amish country and special paving that has to go on. So if we had to go further with it, that clearly we'd want to go that way too. But again, there's very mixed reports. I will give that, but I'm going to stand by what the paving director of Metropolitan Government said.
The reason why we're hearing this today is strictly because of the pavement. It's not because of the health of the animal, and
it became an issue when it was brought to my attention as how much damage we were doing to the pavement. One of the things we may do, again, depending on where we go, we may reseal 2nd Avenue. If you go to the horse stand in there, it's clear. If we did a field trip, you'd say something's causing this. It's not moving. It's the only things that have been in there for several months now have been the horses. And they are the scrape marks, and when you take the surface off, the cracking begins, and it will eventually lead to that if we don't pave it first.
Didn't legal state that it clearly read that it was metal in the ordinance?
Metal ore.
yes.
The ore was what I wanted to present it to you. Again, it's possible that we're going to have to go back to the council if you want to go to the council. Again, it's presented to you because it was presented to me.
Can I say one more thing?
I think we're trying to wrap it up. Thanks.
Real quick.
No, I think we've wrapped it up. What all do we have? We need to basically, we're considering this rule.
you would have been considering a rule. I'm concerned, and the final word from our attorney is that we may not, without clarification from
More recommendation or a rule at this point.
I think you can do three things. You can take no action. You can make a recommendation to council to change what is in the ordinance 1254-240B1 to limit it to just rubber-soled shoes if that's what you decide the evidence supports, or you can seek more evidence. You can ask for additional evidence to come testify before you.
Great.
So in a sense, we could be the fact-finding board with then a recommendation to the council.
It might be that council would be interested in hearing all of this evidence as you all have heard. That would be their prerogative, but I know that in general, council will look toward the boards and commissions that have more specific authority on various issues to make recommendations to them.
All right.
I'd like to go out on a limb here and make a motion that we leave the decision on what shoes to use to the owners of the horses, knowing what their health is and knowing what their needs are, that it's the horses that are really our first priority here, and that no, it's okay. The pavement is our first priority.
I mean, what I was reading from 2100, that you determine in terms of passenger vehicles for hire, what is proper and safe, so I mean, yes, certainly, it affects the public health, safety, and welfare if our roads are being damaged. The medical condition of the horses, I think, is somewhat of a concern. I mean, that's acknowledged in here that we think it is part of the proper health, safety, and welfare. I think it says here that the horses have to be reasonably healthy. I'm not finding, it's in the same list. Right, because that would obviously be a safety issue. Right. So safety, I think, is your primary concern. To the extent the welfare of the horses affects the safety, and I think primarily they're talking about both the safety of the passengers and the safety of the public that is also sharing the roads with the horse-drawn carriages.
Correct.
Is it a motion?
Well, I would like to make a motion that we allow the decision on what shoes to use to be made by the owners.
Consistent with what the code provides.
Consistent with what the code provides at the present time, which is you could use this, or you could use the metal or the rubber.
So we have a motion to follow the...
Second.
And a second. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
There we go.
Was that, yeah?
That would be 4 ayes. I think we have, Mr. Fields, you've indicated there's something else.
We had one other issue that I wanted to place under other business, but since all the horse people are here, I want to make sure it's done and very open. Ms. Robinson is asking for a clarification on the ordinance and the manner in which she was given her certificate, which allows her to operate on Monday and Tuesdays. And I shared that with you. I shared an email with you, and she's present with council to discuss that with you. I wanted to make sure it was clear. Again, since you authorized it, I want to make sure you were clear on it, and we were able to get clarity on it.
And I believe we authorized Mondays and Tuesdays?
Mondays and Tuesdays.
Okay.
And the full day if approved by traffic and parking.
Right. And then somewhere else, this was just in the...
Right, in the downtown core.
Okay.
You want to call Ms. Robinson up?
So what are we being asked to clarify?
Her consideration.
Because I'm not clear.
Could I let her explain that?
All right. Ms. Robinson?
And then our attorney can talk about what the issue was.
I wanted to thank you guys, first of all, for allowing me to have 2 permits for Mondays and Tuesdays. I'm very grateful for that. It's really expensive to start a carriage company, and in the meeting last month, I had laid other options out, and I think I kind of just threw them at you, and it may have been a little confusing, or it kind of got lost in the shuffle, I think. But I would like to see if something could be added to where I can actually make some money down there. So my requests today are to see if I could have additional permissions or more flexibility. One of the requests was to have 4 carriage permits for weekends and holidays, or 4 carriage permits for specific event and holiday weekends where there would be peak demand. And I wrote those specific ones down. These are specific weekends where people are standing in line waiting for carriages to come back around. So to me, that speaks public necessity. The third one would be to have 4 carriage permits for weekends beginning Memorial Day weekend and going through Labor Day weekend, because that's the most busy season. And in addition to one of the 3 of those, I would also like to ask that I would be allowed to book reservations via the phone, internet, or in person on any day of the week, and be allowed to pick up and drop off in loading zones away from the carriage stands, with the understanding that I'm not allowed to park in the loading zone, but I have a specific ride to pick up and would only come if I have a ride.
I think, oh, I'm sorry.
If y'all have any questions, I'm just here. She knows more about what she needs. I know she's put a lot of work into this, trying to get her carriage operation together. She's been driving longer than just about anybody here at the moment. She's been driving for 16 years. A lot of experience, and it appears that for some reason she has been given a very limited amount of time and space to do what she would like to do. She's never been the subject of any kind of fine, citations, anything that she did wrong, and yet she comes in here when there are spaces available. We would submit spaces available for her to run her carriages, and she gets 2 days a week. Can't make a living that way. That's why she's here.
We had people here last month. We had a police officer, and we also had someone from the city from parking who told, and that was the reason why we gave it. You asked for Monday and Tuesday night when the others weren't working, and we said okay, but there really weren't any other spots.
I think the clarification that you asked for, what sent it to me that made me feel like you needed to hear it, was the issue related to the ordinance itself with the carriage. What it says under hours of operation. In 1254-320, it says, A, it says, a carriage shall operate only after 6 p.m., must leave the street by 6 a.m., Monday through Friday, unless the Traffic and Parking Commission grants the carriage specific permission to operate during other hours. Carriages may operate during any hours on weekends and holidays. So the question was, I think we understood the Monday through Friday. The question that came up that she pointed out was, what about weekends? What about holidays? Is that inherent? In other words, did she get it because she got a certificate? Is the lay language I would use for it. And again, I knew I didn't have the authority on that, so I talked to legal, I thought we would come back. Ms. Costonis may have more, could explain it better maybe.
I thought that was actually a good question that they raised, and we went back and looked at the language, and we still weren't clear. So we actually went back and reviewed the tape of the meeting, because as Ms. Robinson suggested, there was kind of a lot of back and forth and a lot of different suggestions being thrown out. And I think it comes down to the ability of the commission to either explain what it already decided, or you have the ability to amend or rescind what you already decided. And I don't mean to put words in your mouth, because it is your decision. But it appeared to me from watching the video that the commission may have been relying on the evidence from Ms. Marshall and the police officer that there was not space on the carriage stands during peak operating hours, which would certainly include weekends, and that maybe a couple of times questions were put to Ms. Robinson as to whether she would accept a certificate that was limited and had conditions on it in terms of agreeing to work only on certain nights. And it appeared that she did agree to that. So it may have been that you all based your decision on that agreement and would not have granted her a certificate if she had been insisting that she would have to be able to work at peak times. But again, I don't want to put words in your mouth. You all would need to determine whether you want to stick with your prior decision or clarify it or amend it or rescind it. But it's your opportunity to do so. In order to rescind a decision that was previously made, it does have to pass by a 2/3 vote under Robert's Rules of Order.
Okay. Now, we did have some discussion around her being able to operate in Centennial Park, too.
There was, in terms of the routes issue, there's a separate code section that speaks to that, which is 1254-310A, which says a horse-drawn carriage shall operate horse-drawn carriages only upon streets or according to routes and zones developed through consultation with the Metropolitan Traffic and Parking Commission. Am I reading that as the current amendment? So you all would have to designate a route or zone first, and then any carriage company can use that route or zone. I had called into question at the last meeting the ability to kind of create an exclusive route or zone for just one company. I did not believe you could do that.
So I think at the last meeting, we did Monday and Tuesday, based on the comments that there would be space possibly on Monday and Tuesday, but from the Traffic and Parking Commission that there wasn't space available at other times. That's my recollection.
That was, I think the issue on other time, the Monday and Tuesday, I think, came from some conversation about how many carriages were actually operating Mondays and Tuesdays, as opposed to Thursdays or Fridays or whatever.
I believe, if I remember correctly, it's exactly what you had just said, that we were probably not going to give her permission to operate, except on Monday and Tuesday, there were very few carriages out, so we agreed to her operating on Monday and Tuesday. Otherwise, she probably would not have gotten the permission to operate, because that was the recommendation that we had gotten from the Parking Commission and the police officer. So,
due to lack of space.
Due to lack of space. Now, we can rescind it, we can change it if the commissioners want to revisit it, but that's, if I remember, and I think I do remember correctly, that's exactly what happened. That's why we chose that.
So do we need anything other than clarification on this?
Well, again, I wanted to make certain, I don't want to ever keep any of the companies, whether it's them or the other companies, whether carriages or records, whatever they're right to under their certificate, I want to make sure they had access to. And you're the keeper of the rules and regs from my perspective, so I wanted to present it back to you to make sure that I was properly administering the code.
So, Ms. Robinson, I just want to make sure I'm clear. You're saying now that you can't maintain your business just on those 2 days?
I could definitely do it. Well, as I explained at the last meeting, if I was granted permission to be there on Monday and Tuesday, even though most of the companies do frequently take those days off, they would purposely come down to flood those 2 days. Which, if I did have those 2 days by myself or possibly with one other company or with a limited number of carriages, then yes, I would be able to make a decent amount of money in those 2 days.
Yeah, you had asked for exclusivity on Monday and Tuesday, and I don't believe that we were willing to give you that.
Which is why I would like to see if there could be something added to.
Again, my question, and I'm not trying to belabor the truth, my question was strictly on the issue of did she have the right to the other days based on what the code said, or were you intentional in saying 2 days? Because we didn't, I just wanted, that was the clarification, because again, I want to make sure I'm fair to everybody on that.
At that point, I believe we were intentional. Now, if you want to revisit it, we can talk about it. If you think that, I'm open to hearing that, but we were intentional.
That we were out of space.
that we were out of space, and we would not have given her permit at all, with the exception of the Monday and Tuesday, when she came up with that option, because others were not operating on Monday and Tuesday. We didn't have a lot of carriages out there.
Well, I think Ms. Costonis has outlined what your options are in terms of you can do nothing. Goes kind of to the other one. You could rescind action. You could amend. You could actually have another. This doesn't require anything other than action of the commission. If you want to either grant part or some or none, you don't. And if you don't want to do anything, you don't have to do anything.
I'm the chair, so I can't do anything.
Correct.
But since it's an issue of space, could I at least ask you to strongly consider that I would be allowed to book reserved rides and pick those up in a loading zone, which would not interfere with the carriage stands?
You'd have to create that as a route or zone.
Which would have to go through traffic and parking.
In consultation with traffic and parking, and then that would not be exclusive.
So what you would do is you'd make appointments, and then you would say pick someone up at the corner at a loading zone on.
Now, Bill, do they all do that to some extent?
Typically, the carriages pick up and load only in one area, or where the carriage
They
stands
do all
are.
work like weddings and special
Yes,
events.
it does happen that other times they'll ask for permission to go to Union Station or go
Yes, you'd
somewhere
have to
to
ask
pick up.
traffic and parking on a case-by-case basis, I think is how that's done, isn't it?
The loading zones are we've had lots of conversations about loading zones and the use of loading zones. As long as they're actively loading and unloading a passenger vehicle for hire or cargo, any loading zone could be used to load anything. Carriage stands were established so people could find the carriages in one spot. Until she brought it up, I had not thought about appointments only, and we are exploring right now expanding the zones. So other people, and because I know Mr. Smith has asked specifically through his attorney, would we consider expanding the zone as far west as Union Station and the Cathedral on Broadway, and as far north as maybe even Germantown? I've had conversations with traffic and parking, and we're not at a yes or a no, but we're certainly at an area where we have a traffic study. And let me just finish that, and I can do two things at once. We have asked for, at the last meeting, you asked for a traffic study. You asked that we gather information to determine the effect of slow-moving vehicles, whether they be the low-speed vehicles, the petty vehicles, the carriages, taxi cabs while moving, any of the vehicles that we regulate, as well as any other vehicles that are impacting downtown traffic, to go as far as the Gulch to tell us what the street can handle and what it can't handle, and make recommendations. Public Works has agreed to that. They're in the process of hiring a traffic engineer outside Metro government to come. In fact, RPM, I think, is the one that has been chosen to do it, who also did your taxi cab study 4 years ago. So we will be gathering information and asking for recommendations over the next couple of months. So I know for the pedals that are here, that's what I'm going to be reporting in the next item on one of the items on your agenda.
There's a little bit more in 1254-310 that might shed some light on that. I was just noticing it does say in D there, it says advanced charter tours may deviate from the route provided the company operates on streets approved for routes.
What would the process be if a prospective client went on your website and said, I have a party, I have a bachelorette party, whatever it is that they're doing, whatever.
I need one more bachelorette party.
There you go. And I would like to have a horse car, and they book the carriage. What would the process be for her right now to load and unload that carriage? Would she have to reserve a certain spot?
She would send an email to me, very much like the other companies do, and I think they all have. They'd ask for special, they'd say on the 14th of June, we'd like to do a wedding, we'd like to pick them up at the Union Station, take them to the Wild Horse for their reception. And what would happen with traffic and parking, they would go to them, traffic and parking we work together, and then the police department is also asked would there be any issues. So we have a process for that. But again, the reason this is different is she was given only permission for those 2 days. Then the next line was to keep within the metropolitan law. Well, the metropolitan law allows requests to go to traffic and parking and to deviate if you choose. We just weren't as it's complicated because of the way it's written.
Okay, well then can we make a motion today? Mr. McNally, I'd love for you to do that. To allow her to operate if she has reservations and
I mean, I think D already says she can do that, but,
I think what says she can already do that?
I'm sorry, 1254-310D says
Yeah.
advanced charter tours may deviate from the route provided the company operates on streets approved for route.
then why is she asking for permission
But
today?
it's not
from
the
us?
route that I'm asking for, it's the days. So you're saying if I get a reservation.
Oh, that it can be
I do
other
it
than
on a
Monday
day
or
other than
Tuesday.
Monday and
Yes,
Tuesday?
you can make a motion about that.
Okay.
Can I ask a question? I was not here last week, or last month, and I apologize, but was the evidence presented showing that on these particular holidays like Memorial Day weekend, Labor Day weekend, that there wasn't enough space for another company down there?
That's the
Carriage stand.
Well,
Carriage stand.
Yeah.
but specifically on that issue, and that's what was the part that Ms. Costonis and I were concerned about. We didn't, I don't recall, now you went back and watched, I don't recall talking about the holidays specifically. Was it any worse on a holiday? Yes, it's busy on
I
holidays.
don't know that was, it was specifically, we were talking certainly about the peak times
Sure,
versus the non-peak times,
correct.
but I don't remember specifically.
Because my thought is,
Having
there's
lived
a lot
through it
less
and watched
traffic.
it a second time, I
Today,
don't
coming
remember.
down Nashville was a lot less traffic. Tomorrow's going to be even less traffic because people are not coming into work on the holiday. So I didn't know if that was taken into consideration last month.
I don't think it was.
We just didn't raise the issue of
vehicular
holidays.
traffic.
Yeah,
I think it was the space at the carriage stands.
We felt we granted what was requested related to Monday and Tuesday and couldn't address the other days because of congestion. But we did not look at holidays.
Can we make multiple motions if we want?
Sure.
All right, well, I'll start with the first one that I think we may have consensus on. I'd make a motion to allow, what's the name of your company again?
American Melody Carriages.
American Melody Carriages to operate on other days, Monday, Tuesday, and any other day that they actually have a reservation for it, pickup in a loading zone as authorized by section 1254.310D.
Yes.
Have a motion on the table.
I second.
Motion is second. Is there any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Is that okay?
She'll still have to have permission.
Yes,
Any
she
opposed?
still have to have permission.
And it was,
Motion passes.
She'll have to follow the same procedure.
you will still have the process, you'll still have to follow the same process anybody else would. Contacting, typically what they do is they send an email to Ms. Marshall and then copy me, and then we run it through the police, and Ms. Marshall will either say yes or say no, just as the other companies do.
Mr. McNally, you have another.
Yeah, I'd like to just bring up for this, Chairperson, if I may, bring up for discussion, if Memorial Day, Labor Day weekend, 4th of July, I understand Valentine's Day as well, maybe. Let's just talk about the holidays at this time, not the special events.
The other one he quoted.
If the holidays, the carriages are moving and they're not sitting in the load, or what do you call it, the
Carriage zones.
Carriage
Stands.
zones.
Yep.
Then I would think there wouldn't be the space problem that we're talking about. They're actually out moving passenger or moving customers. Is that what you were telling us?
Yes, sir. There are actually people standing in lines on the sidewalk waiting for carriages to come in during those times.
And Mr. Hildebrand always said you have 16 years of experience of driving. Is that true?
Yes, that's correct.
Downtown Nashville?
Yes, sir.
What company again?
Well, American Melody Carriages is the name of my company, but
Right.
I've been working for Paul Morrison, Southern Comfort Carriages.
And you actually see this over the last 16 years on Memorial Day, Labor Day, 4th of July, Valentine's Day.
Yes, sir.
My thought is to help our business get off the ground, maybe if we do those specific dates, holidays.
Can make a motion.
I think we'd want to, just to clarify, perhaps if you're going to make a motion, that you'd look at traditional holidays. Nothing against Valentine's Day, but that could be on a Wednesday and not follow the same traffic patterns as a holiday.
That is true. But I can also imagine how there might be additional use of the horse-drawn carriages for a romantic Valentine's Day treat, meaning that the carriage loading areas would not be stacked up.
I'm just the chair.
I understand. And I'm just a humble servant. But I agree with what you said. Any other special holidays you know?
That's why on that one, I asked for the weekend, the Valentine's Day weekend, because
I see.
depending on what day it falls on, some people could celebrate it on that weekend.
Okay. Well, I would make a motion to allow the company to operate on Memorial Day weekend, Friday through Monday, Labor Day weekend, Friday through Monday, 4th of July weekend, Friday through Monday. And that's the 4th of July weekend.
Yes.
And then Valentine's Day and the weekend following Valentine's Day. That should be allowed to operate as well.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Do we have discussion?
Well, the only thing is that 4th of
Clarification?
July could fall out on, it could be Wednesday or.
Yeah, I actually was saying only the weekend following 4th
A
of
weekend
July.
following, okay, I thought you said it had to be Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, okay.
Or
Friday through
that's
Monday,
just for this-
just for
that's
clarification of my
just for this
motion,
year,
that would
too.
be the Friday through Monday
It has to be done again next time.
after the 4th of July, if 4th of July doesn't fall on Friday through Monday.
So she can't work on 4th of July if it's on a Wednesday or a Thursday, is what you're
Correct.
saying?
Correct.
We normally don't work on the actual 4th
Oh, okay.
anyway because of the fireworks and
Okay.
a lot of street blockages.
So we have a motion and a second.
Can I ask
Any
one quick
point of
question?
clarification?
So for instance, on the 4th of July this year is on a Monday. She would be permitted to work on the weekend following the 4th of July on that Friday, Saturday, Sunday?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think my intention is for it to be the Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, if 4th of July is on a Monday.
Okay, so if this is starting to sound like a Metro employee holiday schedule. So if the holiday falls on the weekend, if it's on a Saturday or a Sunday, you would give her the Friday and Monday.
Correct.
If it were to fall on a Monday, you would still give them the Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday.
Correct.
If it falls on a Tuesday, she should already work on a Tuesday. If it's on a Wednesday, she can't work. Thursday, she can't work. And the Friday was already used the previous week in that case. So, okay.
But she couldn't work unless she had a private contract.
No, they're saying that now that I would be able to work now on
For
these
those
specific holidays.
Private contract.
private
yeah.
Where are you going to put her?
In the
I was
carriage
waiting
stand
for that.
because the other carriages will be out on rides.
Hold on. Here we have a motion, and we have a second, and we've had some discussion.
And this is out of the carriage stand. And this particular one's about the carriage stand.
Carriage
Okay,
stand.
just be clear.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion passes.
We appreciate it.
Thank you for the clarification, I think.
I suppose we've clarified that. We have pedal vehicles on the agenda, and I believe there's an update on that.
I referred in that last little conversation that we had regarding the study. Well, we've asked Public Works, you made the request, I went to the Director of Public Works and then spent time with the Chief Traffic Engineer to request that we study the impact of the vehicles we regulate as well as other slow-moving vehicles in the downtown area. So they will be contracting that shortly. It may be underway. As soon as it is complete, I will ask to we'll place it back on the agenda. We'll ask the company to come and make a presentation to describe all of the impacts and what was found during the study.
And you can just update us every month.
I can update you as we go. I'm assuming it'll take 30 or 60 days anyway. I don't know if it'll take 90, but I've not actually spoken to anyone outside of Public Works.
Okay, thank you. We have next on the agenda a driver application for record and towing service from Samuel L. Spain. Is Mr. Spain here?
Samuel L. Spain. Mr. Spain has a theft of property charge that is pending. I don't have any record of it. He was notified.
He was, I've not heard from him.
Was notified, have not heard.
Motion to disapprove.
Second.
We have a motion to deny and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Application denied. Other passenger vehicles for hire applications. These are companies. We have 4: a Cut Above Limousine, Black Castle Car, Cashville Limo, and My Chauffeur of Nashville, which includes a driver application for Mr. Hudson F. Alvarez. Mr. Fields?
They're all in order. One of them we'd taken from last month to make sure they had insurance. The insurance was brought to us, so all of them are in order.
All in order.
Move for approval.
We have a motion.
Second.
And a second. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Who made them? I apologize.
Sam?
Okay, thank you. Patel.
Mr. Patel.
And second.
And we have 2 other passenger vehicles for hire driver applications. Mr. Jember Muguleta. Muguleta.
Mr. Milgetta, when he made his application, failed to disclose a 2009 theft of property charge. Otherwise, he is is approvable.
Okay.
Just failed to list.
I make a motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And we have an additional other passenger vehicle for hire driver application, Maria Alvarez, which may be connected to the Hudson
Yeah,
Alvarez.
Maria Alvarez Rivera. Actually used the middle of or anyway, it's Miss Rivera.
All right.
Miss Rivera had a 2000 charge of theft. She failed to list. Otherwise, she's qualified to serve.
And that was a 2,000 charge?
2,000.
Move for approval.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Any other business before the commission?
I have no other. Did we-
With the My Chauffeur of Nashville.
They actually approved it as part of their motion with the company.
His application.
Oh, okay. Let me.
So we do have the driver application.
Okay, did have a driver application for Hudson F. Alvarez, failed to list 2002, no license charge.
And that was 2002, no license charge, would not disqualify him.
It would not disqualify him, he's eligible, he's present.
We have a motion to approve for Mr. Alvarez for a driver application, a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
No other business before the commission.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn, which
I
does not.
second.
We're out of here. Thank you all.